Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting interview ahead of us about staking your claim to being a serious entrepreneur. Today, you'll be meeting Jocelyn Hill, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who is helping women outsmart their genes and cultivate vitality in body, mind, and soul so they can start living their healthiest after 40. Welcome to the show, Jocelyn. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Suzy. I'm so excited to be here.
It's super fun because apparently we both live in Toronto.
I know.
We might actually get to meet in person.
Yeah.
So good. So I know we're going to have a great conversation about your midlife entrepreneur story. We're going to be talking about your business, what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in the way to some extent, like a hiccup, a challenge, however you call it, for you in your life, and as well as being a business owner. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about how old you are, your entrepreneurial journey, and what you do.
I am 53, turning 54 in a few months. Yes. And feeling better than ever, I have to say, feeling better than I was in my 40s. So I love to tell women that. My entrepreneurial journey started in my late 40s, but officially started in 2020 when COVID hit. I was working at a really wonderful women's clinic, and initially it moved to virtual consults. So I was coaching, hundreds of women. I'd been there for a few years. And then when COVID hit, it gave me the nudge that I needed to go out on my own. And I wonder if COVID hadn't happened, if I would still be there full time at that clinic. So I'm very grateful. It was that kind of fork in the road where I thought, you know what, I'm not getting any younger. I had turned 50 in 2019, and it was, March 2020, and then it was June 2020. And I thought it's time to really launch and kind of go for it with J Wellness.
I love that. I got laid off. I was feeling stuck for 5 years and I got laid off. And of course, it's a very harsh and difficult situation when you get laid off. In the back of my mind, I knew it was a gift. And I often wonder, could I have given that gift to myself? What I discovered was through a lot of self-coaching is I had fear out the yin yang. Like I didn't even ever imagine myself to be fearful, but I was very fearful. So I also think about that layoff as a gift that I couldn't give myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're funny humans, aren't we? We're funny.
We're really funny. And I think what I loved, and it's also part of the entrepreneurial journey, imagine being in this busy practice where I didn't have to get the patients. I showed up at 9 a.m. and my day was full. So I really embraced, I was coaching all day, every day. And I think in the back of my mind, my biggest fear was because I was building someone else's brand and business.
Yes.
And coming from the corporate world that I came from, I was used to being busy and hustling. And I had this fear. I mean, what if I only had 1 or 2 clients a day? Like that, I knew that would be hard for me because I was used to a certain pace for, 25 years, just working, traveling, full on.
Yeah. And of course, you were thinking things like that without having a clue about what an entrepreneurial business looks like.
Exactly.
And that it's probably going to be more challenging and rewarding than anything you've ever done. That was my assessment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
even
so good.
Growing pains, and it's certainly not a straight line. It's a lot of the sort of good days, good weeks, and then other days you think, why did I start this journey?
Definitely. Well, tell us a little bit about J Wellness. What is it?
So J Wellness is an integrative health coaching practice. I've taken a real data-driven approach to my practice. So I work a lot with functional genomics, which may be a brand new concept for a lot of listeners. When people think of DNA testing, I think they think of, finding out if you have the BRCA gene for breast cancer. There's a lot of different types. It's a big field, genomics. The field that I've become an expert in is called lifestyle genomics. So with a simple cheek swab or saliva sample, you can actually learn a lot about how to tweak your diet and lifestyle, which is incredibly important in your 40s and 50s because you can really learn to outsmart your hormones, outsmart menopause. So I think it's a shortcut for a lot of women to feeling better faster and learning how to perform better both at work and just like in all aspects of your life.
I love that you said it's a shortcut. Who doesn't want
Yeah,
a
I
shortcut?
I know. Because the thing that I find with a lot of women now, I mean, think about the last 5 years. There are more podcasts. There's so much information. Everyone's following the same doctors, but the challenge is we all have busy lives. So you can't possibly do everything. I mean, and then it comes down to even with respect to, your diet. There's keto, there's fasting, there's what to eat, when to eat, how to eat. There's mindful eating. And how do you know what's best for you? And really, no matter who you see, I'm talking, you could have like the best doctor, best expert, but doing your genomics, like this is your personal blueprint. This is really, if your body could talk, this is how it wants you to live. This is how it wants you to sleep. This is how it wants you to move. This is how much recovery you need. And it's different for all of us.
That's fascinating. When you said what most people know about genomics is, I just blanked out on what you said. Actually.
Oh, the breast, like breast
Oh,
cancer,
yes,
or the
BRCA
gene,
gene. Yeah.
or yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's a sort of, that's very valid. It's
And
a
I
whole,
had that. I had that done. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's just funny to witness on a podcast when you have a midlife blip like that, because
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going to happen? Am I going to remember? Did I write
Oh,
it down?
it's okay.
What's actually going to happen here? Anyway, what I was thinking when you said that was, oh, yeah, I had that, but I thought you were going to say like ancestry.com or something like that,
No,
because I'm in the
no.
middle of that right now, which is fascinating,
Yeah.
discovering some relatives that were a mystery until this test, and getting some information, but it's still so murky out there. The other thing that I couldn't stop thinking about as you were talking was literacy, health literacy. So to know
Right.
that there's answers out there, but to
There's
know
answers.
you may
And
not be able to figure it out.
yeah. And I find that, I guess one of my big learnings in working at this clinic is there's so many women who feel that they're healthy and they're eating pretty well and they're exercising and their blood work's okay, but they feel like crap. They have no sex drive, they have brain fog. So on the one hand, they're saying they're okay, but when you start talking to them, they're really not okay. But at the same time, they're a bit resistant to health coaching. So what I found is that genomics for me was the door opener into health coaching. And it really fits nicely with health coaching because health coaching is about behavior change. And genomics actually gets you excited about your health. It gets you excited about what's going on. And sometimes it confirms maybe what you've already known. Like a really popular gene to look at is how you metabolize coffee. So I have the variant that allows me to have an espresso at 10 p.m. and still go to sleep. Some people, if they have coffee at 2 p.m., they're awake for hours. There's another really popular gene where I'm not so lucky. It's called the comp gene. And you're either a worrier like me, or you're a corporate warrior. And that's a really fascinating gene because some people, we know those individuals. They just, when something happens, they're really good under pressure. They're really good under stress. It could be even like doing a podcast like this. There's a technical glitch, and some people just roll with it, and it's in their DNA. I have to tell you, it's in their DNA. I get complimented all the time on how calm I am. And I have to say, I don't know how many times a week I have to work at it. I've worked at it for 30 years, and I continue to work on it every day because I'm a worrier.
That is fascinating. And that example you gave about having a tech glitch on a podcast, oh my God, I have had to work on it too, because
Yeah.
when I first started the podcast, and before that, I did some teaching online. If I had a tech glitch, and of course there are many, because
Sure.
sometimes things just change and you have nothing to do with it,
I
I
know.
would actually shake. I would shake and sweat, and my mind was going crazy.
Yeah.
And I really had to figure out how to think. And fortunately, I've got some skills that have helped me figure that out. But I
Yes.
practice that thinking all the time. And for me, that thought
Exactly.
is I'm learning how to manage the technology I need to run my business. And that helps.
Exactly.
That thought has helped me so much.
I know. Absolutely. So that's the reason I have really embraced genomics. It's interesting. It's not what I thought I would be doing. I did a really interesting program, 2 years on the neuroscience of behavior change. I thought that would be really interesting to people because
Uh huh.
we know behavior change is hard. And people, even when they know what to do, still hard. That's why most New Year's resolutions fail. But it turns out, and I know this from being introducing myself at events over the years, it's been the genomic that has people immediately saying, tell me more. And, what does that involve? And then how do I get started? Oh, and I want my husband to do it. And I'd love my daughter to do it as well, because you can get insights about your hormones and on and on and on.
Fascinating. I'm so glad you explained that. And those
Yeah.
examples, very easy for me personally to,
Oh,
to
good.
get my head around.
Good.
So good. Okay. So, what midlife challenges are you facing? When you think about challenge, I didn't want to define it. I wanted the guests to tell me what it means to them, and what are you facing in terms of this kind of midlife stuff getting in the way of you running your business, even if you can predict your hormones and your genes and
Yeah.
all this stuff. What's happening
Yeah.
for you?
Well, I think in my 50s, I talk a lot about resiliency, and the way I define it is how much bounces in your ball. And that is like physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's almost like there's a vibrancy. So for me, when you have resiliency and you have physical vitality, you have a vibrancy, and that's really contagious. People know when you have that. It's bigger than just physical vitality. But I will tell you, like, going back to like when the pandemic hit, I was so depleted. So I had worked so hard for so many years at this clinic. And I will tell you, I ended up with a diagnosis of osteopenia, which is the precursor to osteoporosis. And the new thinking on osteoporosis is that it's not a calcium deficiency. It's actually almost like a total system, like overload, like
Hmm.
just where you're absolutely depleted. It's almost like another way of looking at burnout. So one of the challenges I think now is, now that I'm into this journey as an entrepreneur, I'm realizing how I really have to balance those physical needs, mental demands, sort of like emotional resiliency on an ongoing basis. Because I was saying, like, I feel better now than I did in my 40s, but I'm taking much better care of myself. I am sleeping more than I ever have in my adult life. I'm getting more, like, better quality sleep, and I track my sleep with an Aura ring. I'm very consistent with my workout regime. I have a good balance. Like I walk the dog, I do yoga. I'm conscious of strength training because I need that. I'm conscious of when I need to just go have some fun. Just, it's not all kale and quinoa. So that's another, that is, and I think it's a myth when you think of wellness. People think, and it's glorified on Instagram, all the beautiful food. But I think to really, what I learned kind of the hard way is that it gets harder. I mean, to start a brand new business in your 50s, you need energy. You need mental energy to be sharp. You know, you're going to face those days where you're a bit foggy. You're going to have those nights where you're not sleeping. And so you have to, this is what I have found personally, is I have to always have gas in the tank. And because what has happened, whether it's getting a call that my father just fell and he's, you know, been rushed to emergency, my daughter's having a crisis at university, not only do I need gas in the tank for myself, I need it for my family. I need it. So that's been a hard lesson because when I look at simple things like, why did it take me so long to revamp my website? Well, there's a great example of that's not a small project.
No, that's a
No,
huge project. Yeah.
that's not something you pick up at 9 o'clock after a day of Zoom calls. So that is a lesson. And I think I happen to have two very close friends who also changed careers and launched businesses in their 50s. And I hear it from women around me in my circle. Like it's almost like surprising to them that they
Yeah.
feel so depleted and just stuck. And no one's talking about this.
I'm
That
talking about it.
I know because it's not even like I know better as much as anyone how important it is to eat well and move and sleep and all the other stuff we're supposed to be doing. But I will tell you, the only way my business works is when I'm balancing those energy demands
Yeah.
on a consistent basis. And it's work. It's
Yeah.
work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're saying all this, but I agree. Like, I've been in this space a while, and certainly there are way more people in the space now, but I have not been hearing a lot of the conversations we're having on this podcast about what is really going on in midlife at this intersection of running a business. And I think
Yeah.
one of the main problems is that this is what I've come to.
Yeah.
What I really believe is happening is that we need a new midlife operating system. That's what I'm calling it. And the reason that there is such a problem is because we're as old as we are. So we have been part of a system for 30 years easy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more, that
Yeah.
has created all these expectations and narratives and, you know, our source of references. It's completely different, and we cannot continue in the way that we were led to believe by systems established mostly by white men, really,
I
right?
know. I
So
know.
it's just that we're just starting to appreciate what we need and learning how to really think. What am I thinking? What do I want? What do I need? What changes do
Yeah,
I have to make? What decisions do I have to make? What are my priorities to help me
exactly.
run this business and
Mhm.
create the life that I want that makes sense to me? What is that operating?
Exactly.
But we just like I think I was mentioning in our pre-work, like, or maybe it was on the interview already. I can't even remember. But about menopause to me and this phase of life reminds me of breastfeeding in that there are so many surprises. Why are there so
Yeah,
many surprises? When we were pregnant, right?
yeah,
There were
yeah,
so many books, what to expect when in your pregnancy.
yeah,
And we knew about
yeah.
that stuff, but it's not as well understood. Parents don't talk about it as much. Our parents,
No,
if you have
no.
parents who experienced it. And anyway, I'm just finding that you're right. Starting a business over 50 is not for the faint of heart.
It is not. And I will tell you, having worked with literally hundreds of women in the menopausal transition, the sneaky thing is that I've seen far too many women who just sail through their 20s, 30s, early 40s. And it's like one day they wake up and they are not sleeping well anymore. They suddenly have this brain fog. They can barely get out of bed. They have no motivation. And it's very shocking to them because they've always been so healthy and
Yes.
suddenly they just don't feel like themselves. And I was running a group a couple nights ago, my mastermind group, and one of my ladies said, "I think there's going to soon be, just like there's mat leave, a menopausal leave."
Mm.
Yeah, because people are talking now and people are acknowledging that seemingly overnight, it's harder for women who, maybe they're at the top of their career or the height of their career, and suddenly they're just not showing up in the same way. And what I would say is that, like, I mean, I have a client who's a teacher. If you've been a grade 10 biology teacher for the past 10 years, you're doing the same lessons. It's almost like you can have an off day because you're doing the same thing, like with no disrespect. But when you're an entrepreneur in your 50s and you're learning as you go and it's all new, I guess what I would put out there is that it requires another level because every day is new, especially if you want to grow, if you really want to build your business and your brand. As you said, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, there's a lot of being a beginner again. And as much
Yeah.
confidence and maturity and experience comes with being at the
Yeah.
top of your game 25, 30 years in a career, usually in situations like that, you're not learning as much, which creates a funk. I call it a midlife
Yeah.
funk. So we
Yeah.
crave learning and growing, but to learn and
Yeah.
grow, you have to get in the land of scary stuff, doing new things and not being
Yeah.
experienced. And
Exactly.
that's a big transition. And I'm wondering if that is some of the thing that is going on with what you mentioned in your application, that the hardest part of being an older woman and being an
Mhm.
entrepreneur is this mindset shift from employee to
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. Tell me a little bit of how that came up for you in this new identity.
It was a really interesting, almost like reflection or observation for me because I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I have one older sister who worked for the same company for 30 years. My father, same thing. They have pensions. um, so it didn't come naturally.
Yeah.
Even when I did I was a full-time employee, part-time student for 5 years. And look at what I did. As soon as I finished all my training, I went to work for someone. I went to a very busy clinic. And I have to say, there was a lot of comfort for me being an employee again.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think about it at the time. When you're in I want to call it a bit of a grind, get up, go to the clinic, working full time. It's only when I had some quiet reflection time at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, this is really hard for me. And it's a complete identity shift. I have never been an entrepreneur. I don't even know what it's a brand new thing for me. I don't know how to show up. And I have to start. And it was a bit of a wake up call to the point where, you almost want to just go back to clinic mode.
Yeah.
And it has been one of the hardest pieces for me to even introduce myself, and it's my practice and I'm the founder of J Wellness, does not come naturally. And it's interesting. I mean, it's not like it's been 10 years, but it's been a few. But I'm really now growing into it and owning my age, my identity, and I'm finally taking the steps. And I will tell you, being on your podcast, doing the application, I was so proud of myself for doing the application because the old me would have waited for you to contact me. And I would have shown up with bells on because I'm used to being called and contacted. And again, part of the entrepreneurial journey, you've got to go out and make those show up, apply. You could have said no. I mean, maybe, and I must say, part of me was like, oh, am I really ready? Am I too new? I don't know if I'm right. I'm probably not successful enough or a big enough brand. And I had to just like hands on the keyboard, and your application's long. And a couple points during it, I thought that voice, that critic was still saying, you're not ready. You're not ready.
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I'll give you a little scoop on what's going on with many podcasters. I really don't reach out to too many people. I am flooded with people who want to be on my shows. So on my existing podcast, it's over 1.4 million downloads at this point.
Amazing.
Over 300 episodes. 301 just came out yesterday or today or whatever. So
Wow.
when you're listening to this episode, I don't know where we'll be in the episodes,
I
but
know.
successful growing podcast. And on that podcast, I do half myself and about half interviews. And it's a different focus than this
Yeah.
podcast, but it's very rare that I reach out to somebody. I only reach out if it's a particular thing that I'm fascinated with and I know my listeners would love,
Yeah.
or if it's something that I know has become like I'm hearing it a lot and I can't speak to it. So, for example, there's one thing I'm fascinated about that I have now found somebody. I haven't spoken to her yet. She doesn't know I'm lurking, but I am going to be reaching out to her because I really want somebody to talk about birth order. I'm fascinated with birth order.
Yes.
I come from a psychology background, and I think that would be of a lot of interest. So that's
Yeah.
my personal jollies. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
but usually I'm approached and people make a pitch about why they think they can add value to my podcast. Now, on this podcast, it's a different approach. I made a very specific application process to help me find the best people for the show.
Mm-hmm.
And not be pitched in the same way. It's very specific. And you can tell as you're filling out the answers if you're a good fit or not for this show. So yeah, it's a little bit more front end loaded, but a
Yeah.
good podcast pitch means that somebody's done their research anyway. And I'll tell you, it's so frustrating on my original podcast to get these pitches where I know people have not listened. I would never talk about that, or I just did an episode on that. They're not doing their research. So either
Oh,
way, if you want to be on a
yeah.
podcast, you have to do a little homework. And I don't want to be doing the work. It needs, it's valuable
Oh,
real estate to be on a podcast.
yeah.
So I want
Yeah.
you to understand my audience and understand why story's compelling. Clearly, your story is a good fit for this podcast, and it is very compelling. So on this podcast, I'm interested in what you do as an over 50
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur. And I don't care so much what your business is. I'm more interested in your story. Now, for this one, this is a very
Yeah.
relevant topic, health for midlife women. But I
Yeah.
really want to know your entrepreneurial story, what you do, but then where
Mm-hmm.
this clashes from being in midlife and having all the demands of wanting to
Yeah.
be a successful business owner. So I'm really glad that you shared that. And I'm so proud of you as well for
Yeah.
watching those sneaky thoughts that are very
I know.
limiting beliefs and everything about why you shouldn't even apply, which is
Yeah.
really just fear of being rejected, right?
I know. And I think that's part of growing into this identity because the more
Yes.
I show up, the more, and I've really noticed a difference. And I want to say it's in the past 6 months. Even if I'm introducing myself at an event, I feel like I'm not this like talking head up here. It feels like it's coming from a really grounded place. Like
Yes.
yeah, and I've had such great feedback from like clients and other women who've said to me like, I love the work you're doing and you're making a real difference
Yeah.
helping women. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about is that women over 50 have no idea how good they can feel. And they don't have to do a massive ridiculous cleanse where there's no coffee, no sugar, no alcohol. I mean,
The
some of
no
those,
coffee thing.
but
Come on
I
now.
know.
Well,
Um, but it's, I think a lot of women over 50, they really are victim to that old narrative, like you were saying, that, you're going to slow down and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I'm kind of on a mission to, to really help women realize that you can get stronger and more resilient and more vibrant
oh,
as you age.
I love this. Part of this also is our track record as women this age of having decades of not putting ourselves first. And I know that can
I
sound very cliche,
know.
but when
Yeah,
it comes to health stuff, we just learn to accept substandard, some
I
suboptimal, not
know.
gold star lifestyle living, health,
Yep,
feel all this stuff. So it may not even register that
exactly.
how we're feeling. We're just disconnected from it. And no, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I've heard this over and over again, not your message of not knowing how good you can feel, but just not appreciating that there's more.
There's so much more. And I think that, even that example with the podcast application last week, even that application's a great example of, like, it takes a bit of mental energy. Like, there
Yeah,
were a lot of questions. And if, like, think about it, if I was tired and I may have said, I'll apply next week or I'll apply next month. So I think when you're resilient and strong, whether it's filling out that application, like, you feel better, you function better, your business is better and is way more inclined to grow.
definitely. And the thing about being an entrepreneur is that you have to be open to failing. So if you get rejected, who cares?
And and even that was it. That is exactly what I said to myself. Like, I honestly, as I was going through, I thought, maybe not, I'm not right now. Like, maybe I'll reapply. One of the emails
Exactly.
said, like, we don't take all of the
Yes.
applications and we have to go through a lot. But I thought, you know what? I'll apply in 6 months. I'll apply. I love the work she's doing. Maybe I'll apply for her other podcast. But it's all women
Exactly.
in the middle. So I think just that growth mindset, that I might fail. She might laugh at my application, but I didn't care. I was doing it for me.
Amazing. Because really, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, I get rejected. I'm not going to publish it on Facebook or anything. Look at
I
all
know.
these women who I didn't accept this week. nothing,
Exactly.
nothing bad's going to happen. But I remember being very scared when I pitched myself to be on a big podcast, and I was so nervous. And I had to go through the same thing you're going through. Like, if she says no, I will live. If she says yes,
Hmm.
amazing. I get to help lots of people, and it's going to be a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah.
And I use fun in quotes, but it is fun because growth is fun
Yeah.
and scary, but it is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for saying that. Just about focusing on identity and really feeling like what that process is of identifying with somebody who's an entrepreneur, somebody who's doing different things, somebody who has to explain what they're doing because people don't get it, like all of it. It's really good.
Hmm.
I love it. What would you say is the most surprising thing about being a midlife woman over 50 and being an entrepreneur?
The most surprising thing for me is I don't see myself slowing down. I'm actually, when I hear of people, I have a friend who I was just talking to a couple of days ago, and she's like, oh, 2 more years to retirement or something like that for her full pension. And there's a part of me, like, I feel sorry for people who are retiring soon, because, and my husband kind of jokes, but I see myself working for the next 30 years in some capacity. I love what I do that much. It is energizing for me. Now, like I said, I do need to take care of myself to show up fully for my clients, like to be there in sort of like fully present. And that's the kind of coach I am. So that's been surprising, because I think that old narrative was like, by the time you hit your mid 50s, to some extent, it's like peak earning years and you're slowing down. Whereas I have a newer career and I see myself completely ramping up.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
that's what's happened. It's been
Yeah.
growing. 2022 was my best year. The first quarter of 2023 was even better yet. So I know that I'm like, I don't think I've even seen what's possible yet. And
Yes.
that's surprising. That's surprising
I
because
love that.
I think I started kind of tiptoeing into this
Yes.
entrepreneurial journey. And it's now like like I said, I just feel different.
Yes. Well, you've had a mindset shift about possibility,
Yeah.
right? I love that.
Yeah.
So exciting. And also, I think what I talk about in my work, the shift you're talking about is going from what you can't do, what's hard, to what you can do and what's possible.
Oh, I love it.
Right. And I think you're really going into that. The way you described it was a very visual description of when you're talking about who you are and what you're doing, that you're a talking head. You moved your hands up to your neck,
Yeah.
right? That it wasn't
Yeah.
really grounded. You talked about it being
Yeah.
grounded. And now it's becoming like really who you are as you open up to more possibility. And
Yeah.
of course, that would create a way better feeling state, way
Yeah.
more positive emotions and fun and possibility. And that's the kind of thing
Exactly.
that supported you even making the application. It makes me very, very excited about that, because when I coach, I see, it's almost like I see like a sizzle around people, and I'm not
Yeah.
being woo. I don't really see a sizzle.
Yeah.
I'm imagining, I just see what they're not thinking, and I see their thought mistakes, and I see
Yeah.
why they're feeling what they're feeling. So it's not like an aura or anything, but it feels like that to me because they don't see it, and it almost feels electric to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I know I can help. I know I can
Yeah.
help. Yeah. Really, really fun. Okay. One other thing you said is you do notice a little bit of compare and despair when you're looking at younger health coaches building brands,
Yeah.
really visual things like TikTok and Instagram. What have
Yeah.
you noticed about that for you?
Just stay off Instagram some days. If I'm having an off day, it's like stay off those platforms. And I think like such a valuable lesson for me, and I almost use it as a mantra, is stay in your lane. You know,
Yes.
I have a really unique background, which really helps me. I work with a lot of executive women. You know, some of those younger influencers who are 28, they don't have the 25 years of corporate that I have. I've been working with executives since I was 25. So, you know, I know the challenges. I've been there. I've done sort of like the travel and the, you know, wearing many hats. So I do still need to remind myself sometimes, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And, you know, there's that cliche, don't compare your day one to someone else's. Like, there
Yes.
are people who have been building their brands on Instagram since 2014. You
Yeah.
know, I wasn't really on Instagram till a couple of years ago. So I think it's a great reminder.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that reminder. That is great for everybody. Um, And so the other thing I love about your message is that resiliency really does need to be cultivated. And
Yeah,
there's all kinds of adversity in being an
yeah,
entrepreneur and being an
yeah,
older entrepreneur in this space.
yeah. And to be, I think even 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, I think for a lot of like corporate women who like I now coach, it's almost like just having your cottage weekends and your March break and a couple of other getaways. Like that's how they took care of themselves. There was a mental health break. And it's a real shift that to take care of your resiliency and to cultivate it, not just on a weekly basis or a monthly, but daily. And to sort of listen to your body, know what you need, know when you need to sort of cancel plans because you really need a good night's sleep. And I do that a lot. I really have no problem now saying no. And it's really hard. That's the practice as well. That's a whole other podcast, but
Yeah.
boundaries and priorities. But
Absolutely. That's part of the midlife operating system. I caught myself
Yeah.
I felt like I was watching myself be a client of myself in real time. Last week, I was booking a flight to an event I'm really looking forward to, but it's not direct. So, when you get into these connector situations,
Yeah.
it stretches out. It takes way longer than it needs to. And the event was at night. So the question was, do I fly same day
Oh.
or do I go a day before? And
Mhm.
justifying the extra expense.
Yeah.
And so I watched my mind, and I've taken that 6 a.m. flight many times to other
Yeah.
places. And I know that that means you get 2 hours sleep and you must leave the house at 3
Yeah.
a.m. because it's
I've done it.
international, right? So I'm watching myself go, this is going to suck. This is going to suck. How am I going to go to this thing at night and have fun that I'm paying for and I really want to go? I'm like, I should fly in the day before. Can I justify it? So then I watched the spin and I'm like, what? The two people in my head talking. You know what's going to happen. Of course, you're worth $200 for another night in the hotel and a dinner. That's it.
Exactly.
You can sleep. You can get caught up. Even if you take the flight, you have plenty of time to recover. And then the other one was, well, is that too indulgent? I could probably do it. But wait, Suzy, you're in this work. You know it's a bad idea. And I watched it.
I know.
I watched it from above, like a cartoon character watching the bubbles. And I'm like, it's ridiculous. Of course I'm booking the day in advance. My husband will figure out how to take care of the dog. I'm worth it. And I booked it.
Exactly. Good for you.
So
But at least you had you paused.
yes.
Because so often, I'm not kidding. If you're kind of physically and mentally spent, well, you're already booking the flight. And then the day of, you're thinking, this
Ugh,
was a bad idea. And
yeah.
that is awful to be in that situation where you're about to set the alarm for 3 or 3:30 and you've done it before, but you hadn't learned the lesson.
Well, I felt compelled to share the story with my academy group
Yeah.
because it's so important for everybody to know that even when you have the skills and tools, that habitual way of thinking is still going to pop in. So don't expect that
Exactly.
it's not going to pop in. But what you have with experience is the ability to notice it more quickly and to
Yes.
take action sooner with less drama. So the drama was
Exactly.
actually quite reduced. And I did the kind of thing that I'm proud of and feel so taken care of by doing it. But it really was kind of funny to watch myself and then just have humor about it because it was kind of ridiculous, but it happened.
I know. I love hearing that story.
Awesome. Well, tell us, how can people best get in touch with you?
I would say my website, jwellness.ca. And if you want to learn more about my coaching or programs, like there's a forum on my website to get in touch.
Amazing. Jocelyn, thank you so much. I loved meeting you. I love that you're local.
I know.
That's just a bonus. There's actually a chance for two humans to get
I
together.
know.
And hopefully
I
we've
know.
got the genes that we can drink coffee later on and
Yeah.
be
I
okay.
do. I do.
So good to know. Well, thank you so much for taking the time from your day and really getting into all this. And I really appreciate how honest you were about embracing that new identity. That's such a real issue for so many of us. And I loved hearing your take on it, what happened for you. I really love what you're doing. You're amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Suzy.
All right, that is it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and an entrepreneur and would like to also come on the show, please fill out an application. You can do it. Just go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and take it from there. We would love to have you on the show to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It is never too late for you to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with the show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.